So, it's time for everyone to get mad. Put your mad hats on. That's why I've got my hood up. It's my protection against the mad. Because it's time to run down my 10 best wrestling matches of 2024. Now listen, I have put my own spin on some of these because these lists are everywhere. And it's like, man, you're all so boring. Myself included. And that's why we're going back to the summer, I believe, in AEW Collision. That's right. And number 10 is the Outrunners versus Orange Cassidy. Goodbye, everyone that just turned off. But I mean it, man. I remember I talked about this on my social media at Simon316, cheap plug. There's a bunch of stuff in the description down there, and please do subscribe. But it was just fun, and it was just entertaining. And essentially, the Outrunners, this was when they were about to explode, right? They were having these matches every single week, and eventually the wrestling community went, these guys are amazing. And obviously, they've been going since 1982. But it's almost like a stage comedy. And I do not mean that in a disparaging way. I mean, it is goofy wrestling for life, which is my favorite type of wrestling. But it's like pratfalls, and the way they both try and elbow drop Orange Cassidy and they miss, and the way Orange Cassidy runs his offense and come back on them, it is just a joy. Now, of course, there were more serious wrestling matches and there were ones with more emotion in it. But when I sat down to make this list, I'll be completely honest with you, I had another entry at number 10, which I can't remember now. But this one popped back into my brain, and I was like, I think we need to shout these things out. Like, I really wanted to put Braun Strowman versus Bronson Reed on here too, when they did the last Monster Standing match. So I guess this is an honorable mention. But it's these kind of matches that you do just get sort of on a random day, and it just makes you go, boy, howdy, do I like pro wrestling. Now, of course, there are other matches on this list that will stay with you forever. But this one, it just warmed my heart. It made me feel warm and fuzzy in my tum-tum. And if nothing else, it cemented my love for Orange Cassidy, who I've been ranting and raving about since 2019. But it also was the moment where I was like, man, these Outrunners are absolutely fantastic, and talk about understanding what wrestling can be. So if you haven't seen it, it's only around about 10 minutes long. You'll definitely be able to find it because it did the rounds on the internet, and those that liked it really liked it, and I include myself in that. But I never want this area of wrestling to go away, and you rarely find it on lists like this, and it's something that I've gone back to more than my number one on this list. I have watched the number 10 match more than I've watched the number one match, because again, when you go into the supercharged emotional ones, your brain needs to be in a certain state, I suppose, whereas the ones that are just dumb fun, and again, I say it as a massive compliment, you can just put them on, you can laugh away, and like I say, it reminds you why we got into sports entertainment in the first place. And also, I probably should have shouted the Outrunners out more on other lists that I have done. That's a huge oversight by me. Both those guys have had a tremendous 2024. It's absolutely owned and earned. And in 2025, my new wrestling goal, my wrestling bucket list, is I don't even have to have a match sort of alongside them or with them. I just want to be in their corner. That's it. I just want to dress like them. I just want to support them and cheer them on. And number 9, we go back to WrestleMania 40. I will warn you now, there's a lot of WrestleMania 40 in here because I thought it was a tremendous pay-per-view, or PLE, and it's Sami Zayn versus Gunther for the Intercontinental title. The reason I loved it so much is because it was all dependent on the past. Like, Gunther had been taking everybody out. He'd been smashing fools. He'd come up with around about 46 different finishes that nobody could figure out. And this is why it was the most simple tale of all time. We just went, well, Sami Zayn is the ultimate underdog babyface, and he can be hit with all these maneuvers, and eventually he will rise from the ashes. Because don't forget, he gets his ass whooped for about 80% of that match, and then he basically runs all his moves on Gunther, and this is the real icing on the cake, I suppose, busts out that top rope brainbuster. Now, if you're not aware of El Generico or the Sami Zayn prior to WWE, it's just a cool spot. And you're like, he dropped Gunther on his head on Tina the Turnbuckle. But if you are a nerd like me, it hits you sort of further in your nostalgia gland because you know exactly what he's doing here. And it kind of sums up what kind of a performer Sami is, because he could have done this at every single WrestleMania. He could have done this in his match with Roman Reigns, although Roman would probably be like, I ain't taking that, bro, which I also do understand. But it's the power of less is more, because we hadn't seen it in so long, and he did it here when he knew he was going to win a title. It just meant it had twice the impact, and it just goes to show that Gunther is a terrific performer and that he has a certain credibility to him, which is so hard to get in pro wrestling. You really have to approach it in a certain way. But of course, he loses his Intercontinental title here, which he had for 666 days, but he still went on to be the world champion, and nobody went, well, this doesn't make any sense. He lost at WrestleMania, because again, we buy into everything that Gunther is doing. doing. So this sounds like an insult as well, which I don't mean it to, but it is the perfect non-main event match. You care, you're invested, you get a title change. The guy we all love gets the victory, and the guy we hate but actually secretly love as well sort of suffers his first loss, which feels like a massive deal. It really is, here it comes, the worst 3 words in all the English language, a work of art. It was actually 4 words, so I'm an idiot too, and nobody should listen to what I say. But seeing Sami Zayn hold that championship as well, and you just know we're going to do it with the world title one day, which will also play off here, I think it is absolutely fantastic. And number 8, we stick with WrestleMania 40, and easily the most underrated match of the weekend was Bayley versus Io Sky, which also saw a title change. There's so many things you can take away from this. I think the biggest one is Bayley finally getting her big WrestleMania moment. I do think it's a shame that WWE didn't capitalize this on the way that I was hoping with that title run. It was fine, but I think Bayley deserves great. So that was awesome, and seeing everybody cheer for her, just like, yes, I've got the feels. But also reminded you how good, well, not only is Bayley as a worker, but Io Sky, man. I know I say this all the time, so you have to forgive me, but she's one of the best women workers in the world. Get rid of women, man. Full stop. She is so tremendously good, and here they were reversing and moving and ducking and dodging and weaving, and it's just so much fun to watch because every time you think they're going to go left, they go right, and every time they're going to go up, they're going to go down, and they hit certain moves and the other person gets out of them. You're like, how much MP and HP do you have left here? And the near falls are great as well, because I do think the result is obvious. Like, there was no way Bayley wasn't going to win here, given that we had the build with the damage control storyline too, which also adds into this. But again, some of the 1-2-oohs are so close. You're like, oh, it got me. And as soon as it gets you, you all of a sudden you find the secret source of wrestling. We're like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. As long as wrestling can teach you that maybe you're wrong, and then you still get what you wanted to begin with, the roller coaster is just far more fun. So it's just really, really good. And it's why I'm excited about 2025, because Io Sky's a babyface now, which means you can lean into this side of her even more. And trust me, we haven't even seen the half of it in WWE. She has so much more to give. And these two just work so damn well together. And it always does help it's on a WrestleMania stage. Some people get annoyed by that, like, well, it's not fair. I can't help it if it's fair or not. WWE has got equity in the WrestleMania name. So when you do title changes and you have a match to this quality, it does stay in my memory. And again, when I was writing this list, I tell you, it was one of the first ones that popped into my stupid head. And number 7 is a more recent one, and you can probably debate this, but I just thought, it's like my number 10. I was like, I don't think this is going to be on many people's lists, so I'm going to put it in there, because I think it does deserve way more praise than it gets. And we go back to the Survivor Series when the Intercontinental title was on the line again. There's Ludwig Kaiser versus Braun Breaker versus Sheamus. I just thought it was awesome. And it's just 3 dudes kicking the absolute hair out of each other. And every single one of them had their own individual story, which just elevates it even further. Obviously, Sheamus has the best one as he continues to try and win the IC title, which is the last championship he hasn't won during his WWE run. Braun Breaker is basically going, oh yeah, I'm really good. I'm like a terrific professional wrestler. To the point WWE wanted him to be a heel, and the audience, myself included, were like, no, we're not going to boo this guy. He's too cool. On the flip side to that, you have Ludwig Kaiser, who not only is a tremendously underrated worker in terms of what he can do in the ring, but he is the best heel. You just look at his face. I'm pretty sure I could show this match to someone who didn't watch wrestling, and they would see Ludwig Kaiser right away and go, I like that guy. And that's a certain power that you can have, and it absolutely serves you in pro wrestling. But once again, it's the near falls, it's the you go, I go, we all go. They also do kind of play around with the WWE triple threat template a little bit. Like, Sheamus does get murked for a while, and Braun and Ludwig go with it. But there is still, sometimes WWE does go, these two, now you two, and someone's out the ring and someone else gets in the ring. This one is far more go, 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 go. And maybe because you do have the 2 War Games matches, it kind of left other spots open to them because, of course, the quote-unquote main event players were trapped in cages, so there's certain things you're not going to be able to do. But maybe this ties into the year that all 3 of them had. Sheamus, as his catchphrase goes, having bangers all over the place. And Braun Breaker and Ludwig made it very clear that in the future, maybe even now, they're probably going to be headlining WrestleMania one day. I can totally see Braun Breaker versus Ludwig Kaiser for a world championship if they continue on the path they're currently on. So I did actually go back and watch this one because, like, there's other things I'm going to have to leave out here. But for the desire to be a little bit different and to make sure I give all matches the praise they do deserve, it's got to be in. And again, because it was just bang, 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 and a bit like directing adrenaline into your head, you can watch it whenever. It's like you can just sit down and have a good time. That's all I ever want with wrestling, man. I just want it to be a distraction from my real problems and often stupid tax sixes. Whereas number 6 is the complete opposite. Now, in terms of my moments, which I think is already up now, if not my best wrestling moments will be up soon, this was number 1. So I've kind of approached it in a different way, and again, I just want to have some fun with these lists. But we do go back to AEW Revolution 2024, and it's the Young Bucks taking on Darby Allin and Sting. Now, the AEW tag team titles are on the line, and that does add a real sort of jeopardy to the situation because we all wanted Sting to retire with that championship, but we also knew backstage Steve Borden was like, no, I shouldn't be doing that. I want to do the honors in the old tradition ways. So that does make me worried because, again, I wanted Sting to have his moment, but it's also such a wonderful reminder how great the Young Bucks are. I know it's going to wind some people up, and that's fine. I'm not saying you have to like them, but from my vantage point, I do think they changed wrestling forever and for the better. And Darby Allin is just, well, he's one of a kind, isn't he? I mean, as I'm recording this, he just had that Will Ospreay match from Dynamite as well, which was also tremendous. But I'm not 100% sure I feel comfortable with what he does sometimes because I worry about him, not that he needs me to be his dad. But that fall through the glass, again, it's not necessarily my type of wrestling, but you can't argue that it's not compelling and it doesn't make you go, oh my gosh, and it doesn't draw you in. Then when Sting does it later on too, it's almost like we're elevating and we're escalating like it's the Dark Knight. But it's just tremendously well worked. The Young Bucks know exactly what they're doing. And if wrestling is all about the finish and the pop and making you feel something, when Sting does get the win with the Scorpion Deathlock, it's just like, man, isn't this tremendous? And then you get all the confetti. And again, the last thing we see is Sting with his tag team championship. And that will be in my brain for the rest of my life. I feel it in my eyes right now. It gets me emotional because I'm such a big Sting fan. So there is no way that I could not put it on this list. And now actually thinking about it, it probably should be number 1 or at least number 2. But we're having a bit of fun here and we're throwing things around. But all companies from now on should use this as the template. When we have a legend retiring and you want it to be a feel-good moment, again, this is where we go to. And if you can't do it better than this, then you've done something wrong and you need to rejig whatever your plan is. It is truly and utterly tremendous. And number 5, we stick with AEW. And I admit a huge reason for this is because I was second row. I was very blessed to be second row. But it's all in 2024. And it's that Casino Gauntlet match. I just love it so much. I love the concept. Again, I know I'm boring. I really hope that AEW strips this back in 2025 and makes it its own event, because this one, maybe we can even do it all in. It could be like Money in the Bank at WrestleMania back in the day. But this one was so much better than the other ones that we got because it just took you on such a wild ride. Now, my favorite parts are obviously the Nigel McGuinness surprise. Never saw that coming. And again, someone that used to watch Nigel McGuinness back in the day and holds him up on some sort of a pedestal, given that I am from the UK, and he went and did it all. So nice that he was able to get that moment in Wembley Stadium, which is when he became a fan in the first place, watching SummerSlam 1992. You also get Ricochet debuting, which was cool for me, because at first, like, what's this crazy music? But you also have Okada just being the most entertaining man on the planet. The hug with Orange Cassidy, he's sneaking up on everybody. And I even loved Christian winning because I am an unashamedly Christian Cage fan. And I think the way that WWE treated him for so many years was utter baloney. So for him to finally debut in AEW, where he got more baloney when that happened, and be put in a position that he always should have been throughout his career, that meant something to me. And right now, I mean, AEW hasn't pulled the trigger on it, but it's had way more worth than I thought it was, because we're sort of 6 months after the fact and nothing's happened with it yet. And I do think when we do something with it, it's going to mean even more because of that. Sometimes it's really good to be patient, but it just totally doubled down on this format. And every time I say, oh, the AEW didn't invent it, I don't know who invents it. I don't care. All I know is that AEW is very lucky and very blessed, and they put the work in too, to have a massive platform. So the fact that they have decided to showcase it, listen, it's a terrible term. They should make it their Royal Rumble. I just think it is so much fun. I think it has so much potential. And the fact that you had some real top wrestlers in this too just kind of added to that. And yeah, when this was done, I was like, that's wrestling for me. It had a good time. It had surprises. It had shocks. It had another surprise at the end with Christian Cage winning. And of course, he used Luchasaurus/Killswitch. Shout out to that guy as well. I really hope he's doing okay after his health problems. But it's something that I go back and watch all the time, especially the surprise entrances. I feel how I felt when I was there. And that's what any good entertainment show should do if you are there live. When you then revisit on television, you get the same emotions, you get the goosebumps, you get the adrenaline going. I think it's utterly fantastic. It really was one of my favorites of the year. And again, very excited for what AEW could do with it in 2025. Number 4, amazingly, we actually stick with AEW again 2 weeks after this. because it's Willow Nightingale versus Chris Statlander. Because given what they were able to do here, given what they were following, and given what they knew was coming later too, it's absolutely wonderful. And the only real shame with it is, we kind of rushed into the whole Chris Statlander turning heel, enjoying Stokely Hathaway, but that was cool. Sometimes needs must. And now when we look back on it, on the latest episode of Collision, they were kind of acting like they were friends again. I was like, that is way too soon. But let's not worry about the preamble and the post-amble. Let's just focus on the context of the whole thing at the time. They were just so unfazed about what else was going around them. They knew they had the story, and they knew they had the street fight gimmick as well. But it wasn't weapon shots for the sake of weapon shots. It wasn't violence because, hey man, violence is cool in wrestling. Every little thing was worked out to such a degree. It is so damn good. And even after everything the crowd had already seen, they are going bonkers for this. And when Chris Statlander goes to do her leg drop, whatever the flub it is, and goes into the thumbtacks, honestly, man, you wouldn't be able to hear a pin drop. That's just a stupid pun by me because people are like, that's the most horrendous thing ever. And to come up with a spot like that does garner that reaction when we have seen so much, it just goes to show the amount of effort and creativity they put into that. You also have the other thing throughout 2024 where Willow Nightingale should be the face of the women's division, maybe the face of AEW, because she just has such a positive, nice attitude, which I think we need in the modern day. And Chris Statlander is just underrated. Like, she really is. She never has a bad match. Somehow she's both a powerhouse and a high flyer, which makes no sense. And I actually miss the alien character. But that's a different conversation for a different day. But the other reason I'm a little bit apprehensive about them being friends again is this: on the women's side, this could be AEW's Hangman versus Swerve. Like, it really, really could be. They could have matches for days on end and it would never get old. And that would actually, after this especially, would be something I'd like AEW to try and do, plant those seeds. Where you're like, oh my gosh, we can just run this, and we can just run this, and we can just run this, and we can use every single match to play off the last match, which is also what they did here, because of course they'd had a few fights before this as well. Willow Nightingale on the wing, again, warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum. It's great stuff. It is truly, truly good. And actually, while I think about it, especially given the list I'm giving you right now, it's probably the best street fight of the year. What topped it? And to say that in 2024, when everyone is doing street fights, well, they went out there and earned it. And number 3 is we go to Bad Blood 2024. CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre in the Hell in the Cell. This also could have been number 1, but we'll talk about why it's not in just a second. Now, listen, if you watch my What Culture Wrestling work, please go and subscribe to them. No, CM Punk versus Drew was not on that list. Now, 1, yes, this was an oversight by me. I made a mistake. It happens. But also, 2, when I host a What Culture video like that, it is the What Culture list. So everybody throws their 2 cents in, and I'm just the guy that hosts it. Very honored and proud to do that. But because of that, sometimes things fall through the cracks. Like when I was hosting it, would I have called an audible and thrown it in there? Yes. Absolutely, it's one of the matches of the year, if not the match of the year. Like, genuinely, my top 3, it depends how I feel on a certain day. And it also did so much for WWE. Completely saved the Hell in a Cell that had become somewhat of a marketing tool. Now it feels like, oh my gosh, they're in Hell in a Cell, where we're going to get some death. Reminded you that CM Punk is a damn good professional wrestler, and you can write him off as much as you want, but in terms of bell to bell, the man knows what he's doing. And I think ultimately we can look back, and it turned Drew McIntyre into a super duper whooper star. There are some rumors that in 2025, WWE McIntyre can be like a top echelon top guy, and he totally can. And this Bad Blood Hell in a Cell match is proof of that. It should have been in the main event. I get it, The Rock came back, he's a superstar, I get that, not a problem. But it should have been the main event. They'd earned that main event. And the fact this was a culmination of what I believe to be the best feud of the year in 2024. How hard is that? So you've got all this social media stuff, you've got the injury stuff, you've got a program that wasn't even meant to be a program, only came into existence because of happenstance, and then you're able to craft this and you have that as the finish. It's just a round of applause, man. And Punk winning, but also kind of not winning because he's so broken. That is good storytelling. That is good wrestling. And the blood and the toolbox and everything else they did in here, they tried to gouge each other's eyes out. And again, it feels real and it feels gritty and it feels edgy, not Adam Copeland. And a lot of people feel like WWE had lost that in recent years. And this is a great way to bring it back, but keep it within the realms of what WWE wants the product to be, because they want it to be mainstream and they want as many people to watch it as possible. So it is to premier workers proving what wrestling can be, proving what sports entertainment can be. Amazing build, amazing promos, making you believe they actually hated each other. If you want to use a stupid star rating, it would get 5 stars, but it would get a golden up. And that's what's more important than 5-star rating in my world. And I say this, I think I mean it too, although again, then maybe you can throw 1 and 2 in there instead. It could be the best golden up of the year because it basically cemented that whole pay-per-view, and the pay-per-view did a crazy amount of buys and a crazy amount of views. That's because everybody bought into CM Punk versus Drew. And number 2, once again, I'm a little bit biased here because I was sat right there watching it front and center so I could see it so close. It's Bryan Danielson versus Swerve Strickland when, of course, Bryan Danielson won his AEW World Championship. Now, that moment alone really does throw it in here for me. Again, I talked about this on my moments of the year that you'll see watching Bryan and Brie Bella run around with their kids. You're like, what is better than this man? But you also have the full stop, I suppose, of what Swerve Strickland was able to do in 2024, which was not only turn himself into a world champion, but turn himself into a top contender too. Like, no matter what he does after this, he's always going to feel that way. You see the reactions that he gets on TV. And he just understood the assignment here, which is Swerve's MO all of the time. He kind of went back to being a heel, but really he was just playing the part that he needed to. And he understood that we have to turn this into a moment for Bryan Danielson that we're going to remember forever, because his retirement was going to be being killed by Jon Moxley. And he absolutely smashes it. And as always, Bryan Danielson once again just came to the table and was like, do you want me to prove that I could be the best wrestler ever? No problem. It is so damn good. There's near falls, there's crazy spots. People are being dropped on their head, which freaks me out, especially when it comes to Bryan Danielson. You obviously have Danielson kicking out of stuff like the stomp and the house call. And it's just, I use that term again because I think this is when wrestling at its best. It's at a roller coaster. We did it in Wembley Stadium for All In, which is slowly becoming AEW's WrestleMania, which is also a huge deal. And people like to argue about the numbers. There was definitely around about 50,000 people there. So when you get that reaction, you get that love, and you get that emotion, I don't really see how you can fault it, to be completely honest. It is a tremendous work of art. I've done it again. And the fact that you can use this as Bryan Danielson's send-off, I think speaks volumes for everything AEW does with their legends, or so-called legends. You can pick whichever word you want. But it's also such a good showcase for Swerve as well. He's a chameleon, and I always say this about him. You can put him in any kind of spot that you come up with, and that dude can make it work. Bryan is one of a kind. He's damn brilliant. And it means number 1 is from WrestleMania 40, the main event, Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, when, of course, Cody finishes the story. Now, right away, you'd be like, Sami, you just did a top 10 list. You didn't have any Will Ospreay matches in there. Massively unfair by me, and I could bring you Will Ospreay versus Darby Allin. I could bring you Will Ospreay versus Pac. I could bring you Will Ospreay versus Bryan Danielson. All of these are tremendous, and all of these could have been in here. But again, because I knew a lot of people would throw Will Ospreay in there, I just thought I was going to have some fun and not put him in there. Not in a bad way, not in an asshole way, but Will Ospreay, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the best wrestlers in the world. He just is. And I've enjoyed every single one of his matches that he has done. And his Carl Fletcher stuff too. Brilliant. But the reason Cody and Roman gets in here is twofold. One, of course, just said it. Cody Rhodes finishing his story. I've loved that guy for years. I think it's incredibly inspirational what he did when he walked away from WWE in 2016 because he knew he could be in this role. My gosh, he was telling the truth because he came back and did it. And that's just like, wow, man, I'm going to run through walls. But it also is, to me, the epitome of what WWE should be at an event like this. The first half is just good wrestling, slow pace, the Roman Reigns style, cinema and aura, and all those stupid words. And the second half isn't even a match. It's just who's going to turn up next. The only fault I have is that it wasn't Steve Austin in the Undertaker role, for all things considered, but it's still pretty good having the Undertaker there as well. But when you have John Cena coming out, Seth Rollins in his Shield gear, The Rock, obviously the Undertaker, it's just hilarious. It's just, what is going on? Why are all these people turning up? But it doesn't matter because it's fun and it's stupid wrestling, and stupid wrestling is the best. And of course, it is going to tie into things in the future because there was that sort of underlying subplot where Roman Reigns could have won, but he sees Seth Rollins in the Shield gear. He can't handle it, which turned him into this character in the first place. He spears him. Cody does his thing. 1, 2, 3. But again, wrestling, especially WrestleMania, is about moments. And seeing Cody Rhodes, of all people, who was Stardust like 8 years before this, return to the promised land, so to speak, sort of 2, 3 years after WrestleMania, and when he had lost the year before, and again, there's a whole conversation to that, but we still did it, to finally get the win is tremendous. It's brilliant. And the fact that it does happen at WrestleMania 40 continues on WWE's every 10 years of doing something huge. And I think he's had a terrific title run as well, which means when you do go back and revisit this, it just feels like a bigger deal. I'm so happy that WWE did it. I'm so happy Cody went on the journey, stupid word, that he did go on. And Roman Reigns too. Like, your win can only be, or only have the gravitas you want it to, if you're beating a worthy foe. Ain't no one more worthy than Roman Reigns, one of the big wrestling stars on the planet. And again, the absolute goofiness of the second half of this, it just makes you want to cheer, it makes you want to lose your mind, and it makes you want to have a bunch of energy in your tootsie toes. Once again, I keep saying it, I'll say it one last time, that is what wrestling is meant to be. And I hope we do exactly the same at WrestleMania 41, exactly the same at WrestleMania 51, because WWE does have its own style, and this is part of it, and it's one of the reasons people love it, so you should just do it all the time. Now, of course, I've definitely forgotten a load of matches. Make sure you just put all the Will Ospreay matches down there. He should have had one in here. It's stupid on my end, but I've explained it. So, you know, I am an idiot. We know this. Also, please do like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Click the video that's on the screen right now, which will be my 10 best something of the year, probably best wrestlers or something like that. Otherwise, it is grillandmind.com/Simon. Use code Simon, get 10% off, ships worldwide, and Simon Miller Fitness launches in 2025 on YouTube. So get ready to subscribe to that. Simon Miller 316 on all social media, patreon.com/Simon Miller 316. Simon Miller, if you want some kind of Christmas cameo, even though it's getting a little bit late, that's fine. I can do a New Year one too. Simon J. Miller on TikTok and ProWrestlingTees.com/Simon Miller. Really cool that a bunch of people bought those t-shirts as presents for people. That's very overwhelming. That's very nice of you. Take care, my friends. I'll see you soon.